I think what's hard sometimes, Matt, is like when I'm on the internet and I'm engaging others, especially atheists, sometimes atheists will, it's almost like a slur. They'll say, oh, the apologists say, so it's almost, oh, the apologists will say this about the resurrection or this and that. I see that phrase. I don't see Protestants using it towards Catholic apologists because Protestants will see themselves as apologists, whatever kind of Christianity they're defending. But I'll see atheists say this about Christians, oh, the apologists, as if we're all just a bunch of used car salesmen. And some of them have that mindset that we know it's a lemon, but we're trying to sell it anyways. I've never met an apologist or someone who's committed to defending the Christian faith who isn't sincere. I mean, it's possible they're out there. But I think that they look and say, well, you're already committed to a particular end. You're committed to a particular belief, and you've got the belief before you've put all these arguments for. You're just rationalizing what you believe. And so I don't think that that's the case. Well, first, a lot of atheists, if you are an atheist who enjoys debating religion and you defend propositions like there is no God or there is no good reason to believe in God, that is a positive claim. Some atheists will say, well, I don't have a burden of proof. I'm not making a claim.
Yeah, I want to get to that.
But when you press them, they'll say, well, I'm saying there's no good reason to believe in God. Well, why should I believe that?
Yeah.
Here are many reasons that have been offered. What is wrong with them?
Right.
Anyone who defends a position
is an
apologist for that position. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Apologetics just means to give a defense.
Yeah, and it's not like there's the neutral and the bias.
Yeah, if you are committed to a position and you believe it's true, you are an apologist for that position. The other objection is, well, for a lot of Christians, they do the apologetics later, and they're rationalizing something they came to for non-rational reasons. I would say that's not necessarily a bad thing either. I mean, there are many philosophers who put forward complex arguments for common sense beliefs we came to for non-rational reasons. I mean, I don't think you went through a philosophical argument when you came to the conclusion that the external world is real,
right? No.
Or rape is wrong,
or that my wife isn't a Russian agent,
right? But let's take even like what philosophers will put forward, complex arguments to defend simple propositions we come to. A few examples like the external world is real, life is worth living. And it's
the reality of the past.
Yeah, the reality of the past. Whereas there are philosophers who have put forward complex arguments against those positions. David Benatar has a book saying life isn't really worth living, and it's a harm to bring people into existence. Nick Bostrom has an argument saying we probably live in a simulation. But I think you're rationally justified in holding these views, and then when they are challenged by other people, I still believe this view is correct, but let me answer those arguments that are put forward.
That's a great point.
And so I think that for many people who believe that God exists and has revealed himself to that person through prayer or religious experience, they're rationally justified in holding that belief. And then when it's challenged, they may go out and find answers to the objections that people hold. When I engage others about whether it's the Catholic faith or being Christian or believing in God, whatever it may be, I try to show there's a difference between knowing something is true and showing something is true. And some people, I've asked atheists, do you think it's possible? Oh, I asked Anthony about this. I had a great chat with
that was excellent.
Anthony Magnabosco, who is an atheistic street epistemologist. So he goes out and he uses the Socratic method when he talks to believers and even other atheists. And I believe it's just such an effective method when you're talking to other people. And I remember asking him, and he rejected the idea. I don't know if he reconsidered it in our dialogue, but that there could be a difference between knowing something is true and showing that it's true. And I think maybe many people will say, well, if you know Christianity is true, then prove it to me. Well, I may not be able to do that. Not everyone listening to this is able to do that, but an inability to defend what you believe does not falsify that belief. And I'll give you an example about knowing something is true versus showing it's true. It's possible you could be accused of a crime.
I was thinking that,
Yeah, it's possible you could be accused of a crime you did not commit. And you're brought to trial, and unfortunately, you have just a poor alibi. You were at home eating potato chips by yourself. Nobody can vouch for you. So that alibi won't hold up well in court. And let's say there's all other kinds of evidence against you, so much so, a rational person on the jury would be rationally justified in concluding you're guilty. The evidence points to that beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, are you going to say, well, I guess I did kill that guy? Well, no, you might say, I didn't. And it's just unfortunate. The strongest evidence I have is private evidence other people do not have access to. So,
Yep.
and so like I can't show them my subjective experience of not killing that person at that time in that place. But I know it. I shouldn't doubt that experience, even though there's other evidence from other people pointing in the opposite direction. So much the same way, I think that many people can have religious experiences and say, I believe that I felt God's presence and I felt it's leading me in this direction. And I believe that it's true. And they could be justified in holding that belief, even if they cannot defend it to other people.
What do you say to atheists, though, who say, I was walking out the other day looking up at the night sky and I had this profound sense that there was no God?
Well, I guess what I would say here, what is the source of that feeling? Because religious people, you would say, well, the source of that is that there is a universal transcendent cause that pervades the entire universe and orders us to the good. I have a source for that.
I see.
And so I could be rationally justified. I mean, Alvin Plantinga is a Christian philosopher who wrote a wonderful book on warrant, on why we can be justified in what we believe. And his conclusion is simply that if God exists, it is justified to believe in him.
Right.
He doesn't even try to prove God exists, saying, well, if there is a God, you can be justified in believing him. So you have a source for that. But for an atheist, I would say, well, what profound feeling. It sounds like you as an atheist would admit the source of that profound feeling could just be a hunch. Saying that you have this feeling something is not present, well, just because I don't see something, it doesn't follow that it's not there. Another Plantinga example would be if I look in the backyard, I'm justified in your backyard saying there's no elephants there.
Right.
Because if they were there, I could see them.
Yep.
But I'm not justified in saying there's no seums.
Yeah.
No seums being those little bugs that bite you. Well, we don't have bugs in San Diego. You should come back.
Oh, man, if I could afford it, maybe I would.
But here, it's little bugs that bite. You can't see them, but you feel them later.
Yeah.
However, I want to be careful, though, that a person's internal feelings are not, 100% indefeatable necessarily. I mean, you could have a personal feeling about something, and yet the opposing evidence is so overwhelming, it should make you doubt that, what that personal feeling is.
I think this is how
towards.
you and I maybe came to Christ in a different way. I had a very intense emotional experience in World Youth Day, Rome 2000.
Yeah.
It felt unlike any other experience I had ever had, but it was emotional.
Right.
Whereas you came to the faith through reasons and arguments. I sometimes envy people like yourself.
And I envy people like yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't have a lot of these really deep, overwhelming personal experiences of God. I mean, I've had them and I have them, but they're more few and far between. I've prayed to have more of them, but I just they're not given to me.
Right.
And I think there's a reason for that, and I feel like God has led me to say, I don't give you. I'll be at the charismatic praise and worship session,
Yeah,
and there'll be people who are just, they're just like,
yeah, that's me, baby.
And I'm just there. I'm like, all right, cool, good times, because I don't.
Yeah,
It's
you're not wired that
it's
way.
that electricity's not coming to me in that way, and that's okay, because I think that God wants me to come to know Him through just kind of going through the evidence step by step. Because there's many other people who think, well, I can't be religious because I don't get these feelings.
Exactly,
and that's okay. I don't get those feelings. I believe in Christianity and believe in Catholicism because I believe it is the best way of explaining the world around me, the best way to understand all the different kinds of evidences there are, whether it's philosophical, scientific, historic, biblical. It all makes sense for me when I put it together in that way. And so to tie up loose on what I've been talking about, you could know this is true without going through all these arguments, but I truly believe God wants us to have a firm foundation for what we believe, and He's given us good reasons to know it. And I want to explain these reasons to other people, to equip Catholics to share those reasons with other people, and present them to non-Catholics or Catholics who haven't practiced their faith. But the way I do is I want them to confront that reason for themselves. If I just tell them, well, here's why it's true, and here's why what you believe is wrong, it's in one ear and it's out the other.
Hey, if you enjoyed that clip, you will absolutely love the full interview, so click right there to enjoy the whole thing. Also, a big thanks to these groups who made that interview possible. Learn more in the show notes below about these guys. They're absolutely incredible and honored to have them as sponsors. Oh, and also, if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe and then that bell button. That way YouTube will be forced to let you know when we put out more content.